Hello there, you are watching CNN Money Switzerland. I'm Ana Maria Montero. Welcome along. Switzerland has taken sweeping action this Friday in attempts to contain coronavirus. In a delayed press conference, several key measures were taken. Schools will close until April the 4th. No events will take place with more than 100 people. Bars and restaurants can only hold up to 50 people, including staff. And 10 billion francs in emergency funding will be made available for businesses. 8 billion of this for partial unemployment, 1 billion for special loans or guarantees, and the rest for small business support. Marie Owens-Thompson, Global Head of Economic and Investment Research at Indosuez Wealth Management, joins us now from Geneva. Thank you so much for being with us today, Marie. Wow, what a day and what a list of things to talk to you about. But one of the things that I haven't mentioned in my intro is also the fact that the borders, they have imposed strong restrictions on the borders. This means that the Swiss can move, same for people with C and B permits. Transit is also guaranteed, but business trips need special support. And the situation with the cross-border workers hasn't been clarified. All of this to ask you, Marie, are these kinds of measures, are they worth the economic cost that we know will come along with them?
Right. And there I will say, I guess, what we hear pretty much on a daily basis from the WHO, which is obviously also located here in Geneva. And what they stress is that this calculation, the cost-benefit analysis regarding the measures that countries implement, is a case-by-case issue. Not every country has to implement perhaps necessarily the same severe measures that China implemented, for instance. But on the positive side regarding China, we can see that it took them about 7 weeks or so to arrive at a situation where the number of new cases started to plateau and decline. So there seems to be something in that calculation as well, that a strong, rapid response could indeed flatten the curve of the new cases, perhaps more swiftly than less draconian measures that would have a lesser economic impact, but in the long run might actually have a greater economic impact.
All right, if we go back now to the stimulus support, because, you know, there's been a lot of talk about stimulus support, but Switzerland has actually done it, announcing 10 billion Swiss francs worth. This is bold. Is it bold enough?
Well, of course, this is, it's very hard to assess because we're looking at a crisis that evolves on a daily basis. I think indeed it does look rather large compared to what we have seen from, for instance, other Europeans at this stage, although we hope that that might evolve as early as next week. But it would have been nice to have some kind of open-ended commitment. And I think also it's specific situation in Switzerland, which is a country that has or had a budget surplus of 2.6%, I believe, in 2019, and the country can actually borrow at and be paid for that. Yeah, at negative, we can borrow at negative interest rates. The government can in Switzerland. So I wouldn't have objected to some radical innovation here. Why not issue a COVID-19 government bond? And I'm sure that that would then allow ample financing and at supremely advantageous terms. And it's a shame not to take the opportunity to do that.
And do you think this would be feasible? This would be viable, this bond?
Well, I think, yes, I absolutely do think that there would be great demand for any type of bond issuance from the Swiss government. And, you know, I don't mean to be flippant about these things. And the advantage, of course, of what the government has issued, as far as I understand today, is that it is immediately going to be implemented and doesn't require a bureaucratic process for this to be approved, which is, for instance, a situation that the US seems to be finding itself in, we will, of course, all have to watch that space as well. But when bills have to be passed through Congress, they obviously run the risk of being delayed at great both humanitarian and economic cost for that country. So all in all, I think this is definitely a decent effort on behalf of the Swiss government.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Marie, for joining us today and for your insights.
Thank you.
And with travel over borders now becoming increasingly difficult, our business reporter Kazmira Jefford caught up with Alexander Juniak. He is CEO and Director General of airline industry body IATA in Geneva. He has called on governments for financial help for the industry and said that the overall hit to revenues is likely to be much higher than their initial estimates.
It's probably one of the most difficult and severe crises that our industry has been facing for the last 20 years. We have seen government taking restrictive measures on access, on travels. We understand that for exceptional circumstances, government can make exceptional decisions. We only recommend that the decisions must be proportionate, limited, exceptional, and regularly reviewed. It's a very tough crisis. The industry is severely impacted, so we are also asking governments for significant help, or set of measures to help our industry that is essential to connectivity and to economic development and to the potential recovery, we hope, in the near future.
And you mentioned it just there, you've been calling for governments to introduce emergency measures to help ease the pressure on the airline industry. What kind of measures is it going to take to help them through the coming months?
We have been advocating in favor of three types of measures. First of all, regulatory relief. Secondly, charge and cost relief. And thirdly, economic stimulus and credit lines. So on the regulatory side, we are asking governments, to soften some rules. For instance, the slot rule for airports or the cancellation delay for flights. On the second type of package, we are asking government to reduce our costs and our charges by reducing the parking fees in airports, the overflight fees for the control centers, to reduce taxation on passengers, passenger duty, or to reduce all costs that our members and our airlines are bearing. To give a relief on their P&L. And thirdly, we think that our financial stimulus and the financial help from government would be more than welcome to help us to bridge the gap, to overcome the financial difficulties we are facing, especially with credit lines or treasury facilities, because the pressure on our cash flows is absolutely tremendous.
IATA has estimated a $113 billion hit to airline revenues. One perhaps silver lining in this is the drop in oil prices we've seen, with Brent crude set to finish the week 24% lower. How beneficial is this for airlines?
First of all, our estimate goes from $63 billion in loss of revenues up to $113 billion in loss of revenues. This estimate has been done 10 days ago, a few days before some big states have taken restrictive measures on travel. So we should be probably at the highest part of the range and perhaps above that in terms of impact. So the impact will be very, very significant on the airline revenues.
How much more above that do you think we could see?
It's difficult to make an estimate now. It's a bit early. We're working on that. When we have new figures, we will come back to the public to explain. The oil price is a relief for us because it represents a significant part of our cost, but two things. First of all, it is not at the same level as the loss of revenues. It will help, but it is not at the same level. Secondly, a lot of our members, member airlines, they are hedged. So the fall in fuel price will have an impact probably in 12 24 months from now and not immediately. But it's a help anyway. It will come as positive impact on our P&L, in addition to all the mitigation plan that our airline members are putting in place, cost reduction, potential restructuring, and every measures to save cash and to reduce costs that are absolutely mandatory in our situation.
Joining me now is Stefan Romer. He is CEO of Teresia and Ditum Travel. Stefan, thank you so much for being with us. Now that the focus seems to have gone from Asia to Europe, how are you seeing the tourism industry being impacted?
Tourism industry definitely is severely impacted. People are not traveling, are very reluctant at the moment. They are not doing any bookings for the near future. Yes, tourism industry is affected.
And what about Asians that are in Europe? Do you see them going back to Asia? How do you see this working out?
Yeah, the situation is that Asia actually is more critical towards Europe than before. Before we were critical, Europeans were critical towards Asia because the situation started in Asia. Now it's on the reverse side. The most affected regions are now Europe and not Asia anymore.
And in terms of travel behavior, I mean, do you get the feeling now that Asia is more afraid of Europe?
Yes, you can say that, definitely. Yes, Asia is afraid of Europe because their figures are coming down, their active figures, whereby in Europe ours are going up. And of course, Asia wants to do everything to prevent a second round of virus, yes.
Including closing their borders.
Yes, there are. There are a number of countries closing their borders for Europeans, absolutely correct.
And we're seeing even on the other side of the Atlantic, we've seen the President Trump's travel restrictions for European flights going into effect today. What do you think? Is President Trump right to stop air travel from Europe?
Yeah, that's a very difficult question indeed. But one thing which speaks against that is the fact that most of the infections in America, the history comes from the Pacific side. So he's closing the Atlantic side.
How is your business impacted by COVID-19?
In February, we had a decrease of 60% compared to last year.
Wow, that's pretty massive. Yeah. I mean, that's a big hit.
Yeah, it is. And March will be worse.
And March will be worse?
Yeah, definitely.
And how do you, how do you cope with this? Did you already have contingency plans in place? Or?
Yes, we do. We do have always, because being a specialized tour operator for a region, in our case, Asia, you need to prepare for calamities. And that can always happen. And we had that over the past 20 years. We had that 5-6 times already, be it SARS, be it a tsunami crisis. We had swine flu. We had airport closure in Bangkok. These were all things which directly affected the business. And you need to have plans in place, yes, for that. And of course, every tourism company, particularly tour operators, they need to have solid reserves for such cases. Otherwise, you cannot operate as a specialized tour operator.
Right, and your business in particular survived the SARS crisis in 2003.
Yes, we did. Yeah.
I mean, is it even comparable? I mean, SARS wasn't a pandemic, right? This seems to be much bigger.
Definitely, for us, it's comparable.
How so?
Because the situation also started very similarly. It started with a small flu. It suddenly became a big thing. And in 2003, with SARS, traveling literally came to a stop. People were not traveling at all anymore. They were not traveling on long distance to Asia, nor were they traveling intra-Asia. So we have this experience from 2003. Yes, we know what it means.
And do you find that now you can apply some of these learnings, or are we looking at a whole new ball game?
No, definitely. Definitely, we are applying the learnings from there.
Do you have any examples, specific examples?
Yes. Okay, on two sides. In Asia, you see it already, Asia was prepared for an epidemic like this. Asia knew immediately how to react. And that was also because what we saw, the fast reaction all over Asia. That was out of the experience from 2003. Here in Europe, we also have the experience. We know 2003 immediately after SARS was declared as inactive, people started to plan their trips again. Even during the last phase, when you started to see SARS becomes less violent, it becomes less active, people already planned their trips again. And what actually came in 2003, immediately after SARS was declared as non-active on the 8th of August, there was a rally with bookings. So what was lacking for the 4 or 5 months during the active SARS period was mostly compensated over the last 4 or 5 remaining months of the year.
Well, yeah, that's very interesting. Yesterday we had the CIO of Credit Suisse Switzerland on with us, and he touched on this subject in terms of the airlines, and he was saying, you know, this idea of pent-up demand, right, for everything. But, you know, if you look specifically at the travel industry, that he also felt like it would kick in substantially once we got the all clear.
I believe that. I very much believe that because people, they want to go on holidays. People need to travel, be it for business, be it for private reasons. I believe it will pump up, definitely, yes.
All right, so just to wrap it up, will Europe as a whole, do you think, be harshly affected by what's happening now? And how long do you think it could take to recover?
It depends very much on the duration.
Okay.
The faster it can be cleared, the faster the fear is over, the faster we can recover.
And to all of you watching, you can get involved in today's news by checking out our social media pages, so Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And whatever the comment, it's always great to hear from you. And don't forget that, of course, everything is also on our website, cnnmoney.ch. Thank you so much for being with us, and we'll see you next week.